connected us up. Need a pen. Are we live and recording now? We are on air, so I see the on air symbol. All right. I'm going to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for April 12th, 2020. Roll call.
Chair Simpson,
Here.
Vice Chair Kai,
Here.
Commissioner Wydola,
Present.
Commissioner Bance,
Here.
Commissioner Lumpus,
Lampros.
Lampros,
Here.
and Commissioner Montalvo is absent.
Thank you very much. Since this is all new to us, all commissioners, if your light is green, make sure that it is close enough for the microphone to pick up so that it can be heard on the air and for the people in the room. And when you're not speaking, turn it off, because sometimes we'll get feedback when we get a couple of microphones on at the same time.
And just a reminder, and Colleen can probably tell you more than anybody, if your mic is green, you will be heard. So keep that in mind.
So, and to turn it off, you have to press and hold it about 3 seconds. So there you go.
Press to talk.
You have to press and hold it for about 3 seconds to get it to turn green, and you have to really.
There we go. Not good.
There you go. All right. So we have an introductions of our new planning commissioners. Well, Erica, or I don't know.
I had to push that there for 3 seconds. So I want to introduce the Planning Commission and the community to Greg Lampros. He's our new Planning Commissioner who was just appointed by council last week. Greg, do you want to just take a couple words and just introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Greg Lampros. I've lived in Sherwood since 2008. I'm married with a son that's working from home for people in Chicago, and 5 children working away from home and 12 grandchildren. I've just recently retired from Oregon Health and Science University.
Thank you. All right. And we almost have to introduce our new council liaison, except our council liaison used to be a planning commissioner all of 2 weeks ago. So, Councilor Giles, do you have any council liaison announcements for us?
I do not. I found out very late that I'm coming, and so I do want to express my gratitude also. I know from firsthand experience how much work is being done by the Planning Commission and how important it is. So again, a big thank you to all of the commissioners. But I will get more announcements next time.
All right, and congratulations on your appointment to City Council. Thank you. Staff announcements, Miss Erica.
Yes, so a couple of staff announcements. Our next Community Advisory Committee for the Sherwood West Relook Project is next Thursday, April 21st. The packets go out this week and they'll be up online. The next Planning Commission meeting, regular meeting, is April 26th. We do have scheduled a major modification that night, which is a quasi-judicial public hearing. And I'm just using that word just to make sure our new Planning Commissioner kind of gets used to all the terms we throw around here at Planning Commission. On another note, too, I'll be reaching out to all of you individually because I'm going to be hopefully scheduling some training sessions for early this summer, since I think we're going to have a full Planning Commission here within another month. So that's it.
All right, thank you. And just for those watching, the CAC meeting Thursday, April 21st will be held remotely. So if you want to attend or testify, you need to reach out to staff 24 hours in advance to get the login for that remote meeting.
That's correct.
All right, next agenda item are community comments. Community comments are limited to those items not already on the agenda. And since everybody here is either staff or commission, we're gonna move right on to public hearings. Public hearing this evening. We are going to hold a public hearing on LU 2022-003 PA Transportation System Plan Amendment for Housing Choices. This is a continued hearing from our March 8th meeting. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to testify and provide information to the Planning Commission concerning the Transportation System Plan Amendment for Housing Choices. The Commission will conduct tonight's hearing in the following order. Staff will present the staff report, followed by questions, if any, by the Planning Commission. We will then open the hearing for public testimony, and each person's time will be limited as follows. Applicant, in this case it is the city, will have 30 minutes for presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application will have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will have 4 minutes each, and the rebuttal from the applicant is the remainder of their 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing. Final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the commission, discussion and deliberation by the commission. A recommendation to city council may be made at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. This is the wrong script. Gotta go to my old one. Sorry. Let's see. I have to go to an old one. If you wish to testify this evening, you need to fill out a blue card and turn it in to the recording secretary. And the chair will call on people wishing to speak this evening. Any questions should be addressed through the chair. When it is your time to provide testimony, state your name and address for the record. The role of the Planning Commission this evening is to make a recommendation to City Council, and the City Council will make the final decision on the matter. Any appeals will be to the Land Use Board of Appeals. That's it. Planning Department will now present the staff report. And since the applicant is the Planning Department, you have 30 minutes.
Good evening, Joy Chang, Senior Planner. Good evening, Chair Simpson and Commissioners. Tonight in front of you are some amendments to the Transportation System Plan that are proposed. To summarize, on March 8th of 2022, the Planning Commission held the first public hearing and continued the hearing to tonight to address the following: pedestrian scale lighting and revised standards for residential roadways. The Transportation System Plan went through its major update in 2014 through the implementation of the 2019 House Bill 2001, which is the middle housing legislation. It was identified that the cross-section detail for a public alley was missing from the adopted 2014 TSP. City Council and Planning Commission provided direction on the need for on-street parking. LU 2022-003 plan amendments are proposing new public alley cross-section detail on the TSP, and also revised standards for residential roadways. In addition to that, staff is also proposing amendments to the development code by reducing rear yard setbacks for parcels accessing from a public alley. The next several slides will provide the details on these amendments. This slide shows the original proposed new public alley cross-section with the 12-foot light high pedestrian level light pole. Since the last Planning Commission, the Commission requested further analysis on light intrusion to neighboring properties. We'll be discussing this further on the following slides. During council work session on March 1st, council identified that the pedestrian level light pole should be the typical street standard and requested that the Planning Commission to consider the council's proposal. Instead of the 12-foot high light pole originally proposed, it should be 22-foot high. This slide shows the revised proposed pedestrian level light pole of a 16-foot high light pole on the bottom of the slide. The top image shows the typical street light standard of 22 foot light pole. This slide shows the proposed alley cross-section analysis on light intrusion. Two neighboring properties, secondary or second-story windows along the decorative, with this decorative Westbrook light fixture. So the top image, again, is a 20-foot high light pole, which is the standard street light pole, and the light intrusion, as you can see, is 17.7 feet. And it does, the secondary window will be impacted as reflected on that image on the top. Staff is proposing the 16-foot high light pole instead of the 20, where it does show a 13.7-foot light intrusion, and the second story window will not be impacted based on this analysis. The city engineer has informed staff that the pedestrian light pole does not limit good light for vehicle travel. It does limit, again, light intrusion to adjacent secondary floor residential units, and the pedestrian scale lights do require a few more light poles due to light spacing standards. So again, this slide shows the revised proposed new public alley cross-section where public alleys have been allowed, again, in Sherwood Development Code for a long time. And it's, again, it was recently identified that a cross-section detail for a public alley was missing in the TSP. This revised proposal would add the new cross-section to the TSP, and the details show 21-foot right-of-way with a mountable curb, 16-foot pedestrian level light pole, a 5-foot public utility easement, and on-street parking would not be allowed. Staff from Pride Disposal has informed planning staff that Pride Disposal utility trucks would not clear a 12-foot high light pole. Their utility trucks are approximately 12 to 13 feet tall. So the modified public alley 16-foot light pole height standard would meet the needs for Pride Disposal. It has also been noted that on-street parking will not be permitted on either side of the public alley, as noted in this detail. Staff is also proposing that rear yard setbacks to parcels accessing from a public alley should be reduced to 12 feet instead of the required 20. The reduction would of the rear setback would allow flexibility for alley-loaded garages. This slide reflects the public alley cross-section light intrusion of a 16-foot light pole in comparison to the 20-foot setback to a 12-foot setback. The 12-foot setback, like previously stated, it would create a 13.7-foot light intrusion, and again, the second-story window will not be impacted. But a 12-foot setback, since we're proposing a 12-foot setback, the light intrusion is 14.3. So the second-story window will minimally be impacted. Examples that you, as the commission, requested at the last meeting, I had the opportunity of actually going to the town center in the city of Wilsonville and in the parking lot of Oswego Grill restaurant. You can kind of tell that there is a pedestrian scale lighting along the sidewalk, but in the parking lot, there is definitely more of a parking street scale lighting. In addition to that, City of Fairview downtown has an example of street scale lighting, and typically, again, pedestrian scale lighting are typical on trails. So Fano Creek Trail in Tualatin Hills Park and Rec District also has street scale lighting. As stated previously at the last Planning Commission, City Council requested that the Planning Commission consider a 36-foot residential standard right-of-way. Staff is proposing to delete the existing 28-foot local street residential standard and replacing it with a new 36-foot local street standard that basically allows for on-street parking on both sides of the street. And at the last planning commission, the commission decided to move forward with the proposed 36-foot wide residential street standard on the March 8th planning commission. And staff did amend the staff report addressing the criteria and findings. The applicable criteria of the from the development code are reflected on this slide for your reference, and I'm not going to read them all, but they're all there. All the proposed criteria or the proposed amendments would make minor changes to the city transportation system plan for consistency to meet the community's need. The addition of the public alley, cross-section detail, and amending the existing 28-foot residential street standards to 36 feet would not significantly change the transportation system plan and any existing land use plan policies. The existing transportation goals will remain intact from the last major transportation system plan adoption in 2014. Again, the proposed amendments are minor in nature and is intended to provide consistency, removing conflicts from the existing transportation system plan document and the city's development code while meeting the community's needs that include the addition of public alley cross-section detail, will allow opportunity for different classifications of roadways, and again, public alley can also assist with affordability on certain types of development. And the proposed 36-foot roadway residential standard would provide adequate on-street parking that meets Sherwood's existing and future needs. All the other applicable criteria have been addressed in the staff report, and the proposed amendments meet all those criteria. Notice of the application, again, was routed to DLCD on February 2nd of this year, and emailed notice to Metro and agency partners on February 17th of this year. Newspaper publication was also completed through the local Times publication. Pride Disposal and Sherwood Engineering have provided comments as reflected in the written staff report, but no further agencies have provided comments on the revised proposed plan amendments, and furthermore, no additional community comments were received. Staff is recommending that that the above findings and applicable criteria have been met, and forward that Planning Commission, staff is recommending Planning Commission to forward a recommendation of approval of the proposed text amendments to the City of Sherwood City Council. So Planning Commission alternatives that you have tonight: approve the findings in this staff report and recommend approval to City Council, modify the findings and approve the staff report as modified in compliance with applicable criteria and recommend approval to Council, modify the findings and deny the proposed amendments based on the Commission's findings, and recommend denial of the proposal to City Council, or continue the hearing to date certain if more information is needed. That concludes my verbal staff report and can answer any questions you may have.
Does anybody have any questions for Joy before we do the official public testimony? And I know we don't have any public here, but we can ask any procedural questions, then get in favor and against on the record, and then we can close for deliberation. So, yes, go ahead, Vice Chair Kai.
Joy, regarding the setback reduction from 20 feet to 12 feet, what was the reason for why 12 feet was chosen?
That is the typical setback standards with other jurisdiction.
Okay.
So,
What do we have currently in the city in places where we have these?
20 feet.
It's 20 feet. So give me an example of some place in Sherwood with this. Is it like Old Town? Where do we have this? That can help me visualize.
So in Sherwood right now, the most places that we see alleys are in Old Town Sherwood. I think Joy has some examples here of what we're talking about. And so really that 12-foot setback allows a detached garage to be set back where a car could make, the turning radius into a detached garage, and also have enough space for another car if they wanted to park in that location as well. That would be off the alley.
I know that, when we look at driveway lengths for regular streets from the front, normally the minimum or the measure is normally 20 feet. So is 12 feet still enough, just ideally for a smaller vehicle?
So yes, just for clarity, we do not have to accept these all or deny all of these. We can take each exhibit individually. So if the commission is not in favor of changing it from 12 to 20, we can recommend denial of the recommended change. This was not council. This was not a council request. This is strictly staff originated. So just keeping that in mind, we can pull that. That was going to be my recommendation for two reasons. One is that I am vehemently against 12 feet driveways because you can't park a car in 12 feet unless you have a very tiny car. And two, there are no findings in the staff report to support this decision. All the findings are related to the street standards. There were no findings related to the change from 12 feet to 20 feet. For those two reasons, I think we should recommend denial on that. Is anybody excited about going to 12-foot setbacks?
Not particularly. But are we at the discussion phase of that yet?
Yeah, well, I'm just, sorry, you're right. I got out of.
But that's why I'm asking the question, like, maybe examples, and that's kind of where I was headed. You mentioned something about, it was like, yeah, the pulling into the driveways, but I didn't, the additional reasons I wasn't quite getting, where, other than, okay, other people do it, so, we're Sherwood.
Boring.
Yeah, we're boring. I mean, it just seems to be, I mean, I don't know. Yeah,
You're
more
right.
reasons than just, oh, well, other people do it.
I
I do have another question, though.
Yes.
Yes, I do have another question on the street light height. You said Pride said that the 16-foot clears it, and may I assume that also means that that's like their arm when they pick up the trash cans and whatever, and they bring it all the way up, even with the length of the trash can sticking up in the air, they're not going to be hitting that street light?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I did
Okay.
very specifically say, would a
Yeah.
12-foot pedestrian work? And they said, well, our trucks to clear it typically are 12 to 13. So the 16-foot recommended by staff is what will work for them.
And that's about the tallest thing we can think going down these alleys. I mean, we're not bringing semis and stuff down here necessarily, I would think.
If I could,
Yeah,
let's,
please.
to give you a visual picture of how that works, basically the waste truck, garbage truck, Pride disposal, will be driving down the alley and it'll be driving underneath the light fixture. At 12 foot, it would be tight. At 16 foot, they have clearance. If they're picking up a garbage can and hitting light, the garbage can is actually in line with the light pole, which is right at the back of the curb. So that's never going to be a problem.
Good point.
Unless they are picked up the garbage can halfway and it's extending out from the truck and they decide to roll down the driveway, in which case they're going to hit everything. Just like that. That's the Italian in me, sorry. So if you visualize that theoretically, and that is not an argument for or against the light posts, the light standard, the height of it, relative to any interference with Pride trucks.
Okay.
It's strictly, can they get underneath it with enough clearance?
And what's the biggest thing that's going to be driving down this that's that high?
It'll
is
be
kind of the
that
question.
high. Now, what also drove that height is that is also a pole height that is supportable by PGE. In other words, we are not buying or requiring anything unique, the no blue lights. Okay, so basically PG supports it, and we can put it underneath our standard options of, type A, B, C, whatever. And they will take care of it because they provide for that light pole setting. So that's the second thing. Setback requirements. It depends on how you look at things. Setback requirements on alleyways, particularly when you're talking small units like this, condo units, whatever. Usually from my understanding of how these are going together, and I've done like only about 5 or 6 of them because they are difficult to establish. I'm not in favor of them myself, but we got to make amends. The state has dictated, so there we are. Generally speaking, you have ganged parking within the building. In other words, you've got it one spot up front, and you've got a second spot right behind it within the footprint of the building. So your first floor level tends to be parking with a stairway going up to the living units. And there is no parking on the outside. That's my general experience with these things, is that there isn't supposed to be parking between the building and the frontage road. If it is, then it's going to be for a minimal. It's going to be small car parking, which is why the 12-foot setback was recommended, is because we've got to have at least 5 feet for the PUE, and you've got to have a little bit beyond that. But generally speaking, 12 feet is for a small car. Now that allows 3 parking spaces. 3 cars can park in there, in that facility, which is what they try for. So that's the rationale. Are you going to get an SUV in there? No. Are you going to get a pickup truck in there? No. Are you going to get a medium-sized car in there? No. Are you going to get a small compact car in there? Most likely. There's no sidewalks. So when they park, it's right up the garage door, right to the back curb. And that's the way it is. So that's establishing why we set the setback within that zone. We could go to 15 feet. We said, well, what are we gaining by doing this? And a lot of it was the respect of how do we get the building set relative to the curb line, relative to the light intrusion, how far back, how far it goes. The further back we set it, the lower the light intrusion into the building. The closer it gets, the more intrusion you get. At 12 foot, you get little. Not enough to make it a homeowner issue at the second floor. It's very minimal. Going back out, it actually makes it better. We don't get that light intrusion. So I'm in favor of maybe going further out. But if we're talking about how parking is utilized by these facilities, and the fact that there is no parking in front of them, the frontage road for these things are usually not supposed to be parked at all, then you got to allow some room. And generally that's how I have placed buildings and setbacks relative to alleyways.
Sorry. Have you closed the public hearing?
No.
Okay.
We are,
Which is good, because I kind of have a clarification question that I want to ask, but probably isn't appropriate if you've closed. So, and this might be for the commission and it might be for Joy, but when I look at the rear yard setback, I'm thinking of the rear yard building setback. Generally, you have a single family home, you got 20-foot front yard, 20-foot rear yard, and you have, 20 feet from the garage. If in looking at other jurisdictions, rear yard setback for alley loaded garages, I guess I'm questioning whether or not that was for it probably was the distance between the garage and the alley, but it makes me wonder if it wasn't for the structure and the alley, meaning that if you've got an alley, you don't necessarily have to have a 20-foot rear yard because you've sort of got streets on both sides, and so maybe you need to distinguish the setback between the structure and the alley versus the garage entrance and the alley. Does that make sense? Sort of the same way we do with the front yard, where you've got your front yard setback is so many feet, but you've got to have at least 20 feet between the street and the garage. Does that make sense?
Yes. There's a distinction between a garage and a building, because if the back of the building is not entirely garage, then what are we doing?
What are the cases right now that we allow these kinds of public alleys? And because I just need to kind of contextualize this particular issue with parking cars in there or whatnot. Where are these allowed right now? Or where do we expect them to be as well?
We only have one public alley that we've approved, and that was with the one off Cedar Brook Way, Cedar Brook condos, that development back there. We have a public alley development, and that was through a PUD, and it had a whole bunch of different stuff that we didn't have to comply with that was unique.
Aren't there alleys over by the Target, the small lot project?
Those are, they're not alleys, those are street level that are, that's
Narrow
their.
streets.
The narrow street standards, which are
Okay.
completely different than.
Okay,
well,
thank you.
Not completely different, but they have a different use than this type of setup. So we've only got one that I know of that is set that we're looking at that is newer than 1930. And- So Old Town is a completely different animal. Yeah, and so part of this is laying the foundation for Sherwood West, right? That we're saying when we have some more compacted housing situations there, is that, oh, can I talk? Oh, sorry. I'm still learning.
You're testifying at this point, then.
I have a lighting question, and it just, on the example you gave, the light shows in red. Is that just to show that's a change, or, I think of the blue light issue from 20 years ago. We're not gonna have red lights out there, right, as far as red structures?
So the color of the lighting was a CAD thing.
Oh.
I drew this up, so you're gonna have to take some, it's been a while since I've actually done stuff, but the color red was to help identify it, how it looks, okay? It's not indicative of the color that we're going to make.
Asking the question, because I lived here during the blue light days.
Yes, no, everything is going to be black or silver.
Fluorescence.
So we're not going to go with the signature Sherwood blue. If there's not a name for that Sherwood blue, I think we should call it Sherwood boring blue.
Well, the blue over time turns into sort of a disintegrated yellow white, so if you want me to, I can do
mind.
it. It's
Yeah.
just, if you want another standard, go for it.
I like the black and or silver.
All right. So are there any other questions before, because otherwise I will go into deliberation. I need to be mindful of that. Thank you. Any more questions? I have questions that are related to our deliberation process. So any other questions about the actual document we're looking at? So we do not have anybody here in the audience. Did we receive any written testimony?
No, we did not.
So we have no persons in favor or against or neutral. And staff technically has nothing to rebut based on the testimony. So I'm going to close the public testimony and go to deliberation, and I have comments and edits for this document based on my review of it. I'm going to go through it as quickly as I can just to get it out there on the table, and then we can talk about it. On page 1 in the review criteria E, it is only cited goals 1, 2, and 12, but in the document itself later on pages 8 and 9, goals 9, 10, 11 were added with findings, so we need to be consistent. I don't see how economic development, housing have anything to do with the transportation plan that we're adjusting. Because we're, again, as I stated earlier, the third item that was added to this hearing without, that wasn't part of our, the last item, the 12-foot setback, was not part of the continued hearing. It was not presented to us on March 8th. That item is not in the findings. It's not addressed under the housing, and it's not addressed in the economics, so I'm not sure why goals 9, 10, and 11 are part of the findings when they're not mentioned in the review criteria. Next one is, throughout the document, I believe it's really important for, as a community, we provide findings and evidence that we're not doing our 36-foot wide street only for the purpose of parking, but there are two other key elements to our decision-making that we've identified, which is the improvement of safety within our community. That has been really brought to light, that we need to have good, visible, wide streets so pedestrians and bicycles can travel safely, and we need to have efficient connectivity. The 28-foot street that is on Redfern is an example of our community rallying that a 28-foot wide street is not sufficient for full connectivity, and that went all the way to Luba, as was testified to by Mr. Shannon at our previous hearing, that 36-foot wide streets need to be in play to have adequate and efficient connectivity. So as we go through with the state of Oregon, trying to find more environmental ways to narrow the streets, we need to keep in mind that for efficiency and safety, 36 feet is what the standard in Sherwood is. And I think the document, in all the places that the findings reflect only the need for parking, those two elements need to be added to the text. And then I think for clarity, when we do some of these things, if this gets either remanded or appealed, it would be nice to have clarity that Exhibit A has these findings and Exhibit B has these findings, so that the proposed TSB changes are two separate exhibits, and I think that we can add a little bit of clarity that say the alleyway was just an inclusion because it was omitted previously, and the 36-foot wide street has a particular need to meet. And I have notes on that in a couple of places. And there's a typo on page 7, but I can get that to you later. And then my recommendation would be to, at a minimum, change the rear yard setback to something greater than 12 feet, because we're already demonstrating that we have a light intrusion. My personal recommendation would be to keep our rear yard setbacks at 20 feet until council and commission has an opportunity to do public outreach and get more information. But if you want to keep it on there, I think we should consider something that doesn't create light intrusion. Closer to 16 feet at least, but I don't know. I'm just throwing out a number. I'd like to keep it at 20. So those are my comments.
I agree. I think until there's further study or findings regarding what amount to reduce it to, I think it should remain at 20 for the time being.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me this is an alley, so I'm a bit mixed because I'm totally cognizant of the parking issues, and we know that's a major problem for the citizens of our city. Other issues are brought up too, the light intrusion and all that stuff. On the other hand, it's an alley, so they're kind of by design are supposed to be kind of skinny and narrow, and that's sort of the point. So that makes me mix a little bit, but what's hard here is just kind of what you guys were saying. There's just, I mean, there's one in the city that we have to kind of work off of and think about. And on the other hand, we're thinking toward the future of what's to come and new developments, but it's kind of hard to visualize without really knowing how this is going to be used, where it will go, in what circumstances. Because if it really is like one of the pictures we saw where it's like going between a bunch of houses and those houses need parking, well then, yeah. Or if the alley is actually going to provide a bunch of parking or facilitate to a bunch of parking, then probably going to need parking space. If it's really just going between buildings that, you know, just with docking bays or something like that, that could be a little different. So I agree. That's a long way of saying I think I agree. I think we just need a little bit more information, maybe some feedback on, and maybe planning as to when these kinds of things will be allowed and used exactly. And then we kind of tailor them accordingly.
Sure, Lampros, I know this is, so first off, this item itself was not part of our continued hearing. It was not presented to us on March 8th. So I don't know if we meet noticing requirements on it, and there are no findings in the document, so I'm concerned that we are not in compliance by doing this. But do you just have a gut shot opinion? We'll throw you out there.
Well, I just think that you should have continued review on the subject since it's sort of been thrown in there like that. And as he mentioned, I think to say how it would be used in the future, where we plan to use it would be interesting to see what aspects it would be used in, why it's necessary.
Commissioner Whipple?
My question would be, can we change it to the 20 feet for now and then revisit in the future, and just to move forward today?
Yes, absolutely. And I guess I would ask staff, because we have 3 items, and the third item that was added since our last hearing is this item. Normally, I would say that because it had been noticed, we would make a recommendation for denial so council could weigh in on it. We wouldn't just pull it from the packet, correct? I mean, I've not had a legislative matter come this way before, because usually we take the packet, we recommend approval or denial, and send the whole packet to the council with the exhibits that we had in front of us. So, I mean, so do we recommend denial on one and approval on?
Yes, you're getting to exactly what I was going to say, Jean. I think we can take this step by step.
Mm-hmm.
So Exhibit A, you can make a recommendation to council on. Exhibit B, you could make a recommendation to council on whether to approve or to deny, to pull it to the packet because you need additional information. And then the third item, you can make a recommendation on.
So you're saying that on Exhibit C, we could remand it back to ourselves?
Correct,
For-
for additional information.
For additional,
staff
but
to
my,
bring it back at a
yeah,
different hearing.
I would like to get, A and B are important, especially B, important to get in there as we get the housing choices implemented.
So I think I'm going to say similar. I mean, I guess to me, it's no different than if you are reviewing code language and you make changes to the code language that's being proposed. You're forwarding your recommendation. Your recommendation is going to be to council to approve exhibit whichever and whichever.
A and B.
And it's not going to be to approve that one because you want to explore it more, and then staff will just,
Correct.
Bring it back to us.
yeah.
So our recommendation on Exhibit C appears to be removing the staff recommendation. And then if council can look at it, and if they want 12 feet or some other number, they at least will have it in their hearings. Okay.
What was it currently?
20 feet.
It is 20 feet currently, okay. Yep.
And then,
That's what I thought.
they could get a variance for further. And I think Julia's comment earlier is very valid because is it a garage 20-foot setback or the building 20-foot setback? Because the building may have, if we do a 20-foot setback for the garage and they have the building come, because oftentimes the building will come out over the garage. So I think we need to have better understanding of what we're approving before we do something. Yes.
I'm
Commissioner
thinking
White.
that we possibly have a procedural issue though, as far as with not, having this on, I wasn't present for the, previous meeting on March 8th, so if this wasn't discussed at that meeting, then we'd have to pull this and publicly, announce it again, or what's that process work?
I don't know, and that's why I'm asking staff to look at it. Procedurally, this wasn't at our previous hearing, so I don't know, was it noticed to DLCD on February 2nd when we were doing the other noticing?
Okay. It was not. So procedurally, there is an error. So the recommendation, yeah, it shouldn't move forward. What staff will do is we'll bring it back at a later time and renotice it and deliberate on it further.
So, we have another procedural item that needs to come back before us, having to do with adjustments and variances. So if those two items could be noticed and brought back with this procedural one, we might be able to clean up three things all at once. That would be great.
So for tonight, do we need to, what do we, as the planning commission, do we need to,
Find our motion text and.
yeah, well, I'm looking at that. Do we still need to separate it out from exhibit A and B?
Yes, that makes it clean.
Okay. So we'll do two separate motions then? Okay.
Yes. So I had made, I guess my comments, I would like just other commissioners, were there any questions or concerns about my comments about adding stronger language about safer and efficient connections? Is there any?
I concur. I agree.
And then I would like staff to respond to the review criteria on goals 9, 10, and 11.
Definitely, we can add those.
So goals 9, 10, and 11 are not part of the review criteria. So either one, we just need to be, they need to be consistent either way. I don't think they add to the findings, but if they're necessary for approval, then we need to add it in section E. I don't know which way is right, technically, but, okay. Thank you. This was, a lot for your first meeting, isn't it? All for a light pole in a street, huh? All right, Vice Chair Kai, are you ready to make a motion, or do you have any questions or comments?
So, just so I understand, we'll be making a motion to forward a recommendation of approval on exhibits A and B. In the motion, do you want it specifically mentioning removing goals 9, 10, and 11?
Oh, I guess that's that's a good question for staff. Are you going to remove 9, 10, and 11, or are you going to correct the?
Our suggestion would just to be to remove those goal findings. If you don't
In the
believe they
motion?
if you don't believe they add anything to the finding itself, those could be struck.
And then, Chair Simpson, do you want in the motion for it to include stronger language regarding Exhibit B, regarding safety and what was the other one?
Connectivity.
Safety and connectivity. Okay. All right.
So goal 11 is public facilities and services. It is the purpose of this goal to plan and develop timely, orderly, and efficient arrangement of public facilities. TSP assist. So the TSP assists the city in compliance. It doesn't actually state that we are in compliance with it. It just states that it's a goal. So, I don't think you're right. I think deleting it because it doesn't forward the cause at all in the findings as they're written. So, yeah.
So
We'll-
9, 10, and 11.
We'll remove the goal 9, 10, and 11 findings because they're not relevant or forwarding the cause of supporting the document.
Okay, so unless there's anything else, I think I'm ready to make a motion. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the city council for case file LU 2022-003 PA Transportation System Plan Amendments for Housing Choices continued from March 8th, 2022, based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and condition in the staff report with the following modifications of Planning Commission is forwarding a recommendation of exhibits A and B, striking goals 9, 10, and 11 from the findings, and adding stronger language regarding exhibit B pertaining to the issues of safety and connectivity for wider streets.
Second?
Do you have to address Exhibit C yet, or can we say?
I think that's separate.
We'll do a separate.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we forward a recommendation of approval on LU 2022-003 PA Exhibits A and B as amended and revised per discussion. Any further comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And so on this one, we just need, just regarding,
Exhibit C. I think technically we need to move to strike due to technical, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of denial to the city council for case file LU 2022-003 PA Transportation System Plan Amendments for Housing Choices, Exhibit C, based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and conditions in the staff report due to technical
Procedural error.
procedural errors.
So do we forward a
I
recommend?
have a,
I
yeah,
don't-
as I
as
say,
I
I have
say, I
a
don't
point
know
of
if-
clarification. I think rather than you recommending denial, I would think that your motion is that you not forward a recommendation
Okay.
due to procedural issues and direct staff to schedule something for a future date or something.
Okay, so I amend the motion to, say it again, Julia.
I think you are making a motion to not forward a recommendation on Exhibit C
Okay,
due to procedural issues.
okay. So I amend the motion for the planning commission to not forward Exhibit C due to procedural issues.
Period.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we not forward Exhibit C on case file LU 2022-003 PA TSP amendment due to procedural errors. Any comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And staff will bring that back under a new date with our other document items. All right. So the other, let's see, commissioner comments. Commissioners, I first want to welcome everybody here. It has been 2 long years, 2 years since I've seen the two gentlemen on this side of me, and my first meeting for our new commissioner and Commissioner Bance, who is technically new, but not really, because he's been here
2020.
since 2020. So it's very exciting to see everybody's faces and to be in person so that we can start doing the business of the community in person. So I appreciate everybody coming, and the work session beforehand where we had a nice meet and greet was fabulous, and thank you to everybody. Any other commissioner announcements or comments?
I was thinking about last time we met, or maybe it was the time before, you had brought up language in OAR around House Bill 2001 that we hadn't considered before. I just want to keep that in sight. I don't know what we're doing with that. I maybe bring that back at some point. We revisit that. I don't know what are the next steps on that? What happens with that next? Is that more digging by the city before we talk about it again, or do we just kind of, how does that go?
We can definitely dig into that conversation. I do want to let the commission know that there is no city in Oregon that is using that requirement in the OAR. A couple cities have tried. The closest city that came to mapping the entire city and looking at what they call it's really a performance metrics. And the closest city that did this work was the city of Beaverton. But after they mapped the entire city and then tried to figure out the ratios of middle housing per each census block, it didn't work for the city. And I don't know if honestly, in speaking to DLCD staff, I don't know if there's going to be a city where that performance metric actually works.
So I hear you. I think what we probably need to do is I'd just like more information on that and just kind of talk it through so we understand it, because I don't know that I do totally. And then if that's the case, it doesn't really work for us, that's fine. But maybe we need to include that as part of a working session or something just to go through it. Yeah.
As we're going through Sherwood West, if it's an opportunity to provide specific planning areas that would be middle housing specific, so that we can utilize a tool that we haven't used before. Does the House Bill 2001 requirement say that we can't do Sherwood West separate from Sherwood? It is citywide. So those are things that I would ask questions about too. Is this metrics for middle housing? Can you do it for just part of your community?
Is it really a tool in our toolbox, or is it really just something we can't do easily? That's kind of what we need to explore a little bit.
Yeah.
My only other comment is I won't be here next time. I'll be out of town.
All right. You will get. We have another commissioner who could not make it this evening, so you'll miss the new commissioner coming next time. So, and a new commissioner, Commissioner Lampros,
Like a lamp and a rose.
Lampros
Without
is going to think all our meetings are super easy and fun, and they get over right promptly at 8 o'clock. Any other questions, comments? Then I think that was the last agenda item. It says I can adjourn. All right, meeting is adjourned, and